Knights of Sidonia, another manga by Tsutomu Nihei, the mangaka who did Blame. Is it good? Is it bad? Well, at the very least, it's interesting. We start off in the manga following Tanikaze as he is engaging in some kind of mech battle in a city fighting some kind of monster, and then we find out that he's actually in like a training pod, and there's these sea of training pods, and he has the high score, I assume in all of them, or if they're working, that is. He gets hungry, so he goes back and looks for his grandfather, but grandpa's either asleep or dead. We don't get confirmation of this until a little bit later. And we're out of rice, so what are we going to do? Well, Tanikaze meanders around, he falls into a rice machine, and eventually he gets picked up and taken to the captain of the ship, and she tells him that she wants to show him something, and we see some kind of slit in the background of like the wall, and so she's showing him something. Who knows? It's kind of ironic that we don't actually see what she shows him until later on, after it's obvious what's going on. So I'll just tell you now. The thing that she shows him is space. They're in a spaceship. What ends up happening though is that Tanikaze goes around and does all these like kind of odd jobs to like make sure the ship's all good. Like he checks the ligatures in case like the ship would be jostled around. You can like put your belt thing on the ship and then make sure that you're not going to fall around, and his job is to make sure that these are all in place. This also leads into one of the worst setup scenes in the manga that kind of is a staple. Basically, the I saw a bunch of girls in their underwear scene, and I'm going to get beat up over and over again. This happens probably 10 plus times in the manga, and it's never funny or interesting, and it's the same joke over and over again. None of the characters that it happens to are worthy of like even side grade character status. So it's really really lame. But anyway, moving past that, why are we on a spaceship? Well, we're on the Sidonia, and the people on the Sidonia are the Knights of Sidonia, which the manga does title drop itself 2 times. Each time it feels just totally lame, but who cares? So why are we on a spaceship? What are we doing? We're on a spaceship because we're supposedly the last remaining humans after the Earth has been destroyed by a creature called the Gauna, some kind of, they're all the Gauna, none of them have any kind of special designation, they're all just Gauna. Kind of, the name obviously is derived from fauna. If you ever are talking about, plants and animals, you got flora and you have fauna. Well, this is Gauna, space creatures. It feels quite silly. But anyway, the first battle with the Gauna happens quite early on in the manga and is pretty much one of the best. Although I personally don't like it, but I have to admit it's the one time where it's interesting. So the Gauna are these like just space amoeba horrific monster creatures. They're just, imagine a human if the human also had like hoof limbs, but the hoof limbs were made out of like pure flesh and dangling, and then there was just like bits of flesh dangling, kind of like a miasma around the person, and just it's very disturbing. So they go out in these mechs and they're fighting this Gauna, and one of the characters ends up getting eaten by the Gauna. And of course, right before she's going to get eaten, we get a quick flashback about, her upbringing, and, we're trying to get the audience to give a shit about this character we've never seen before who's about to die. Yeah, good job, mangaka. Oh, and of course, too, while she's being eaten, her clothes are ripped off because, of course, that's going to happen at some point. She's literally a pilot in a mech. But of course, yeah, her clothes are get taken off, and then the Gauna eats her, and then the Gauna basically transforms into a horrible Gauna version of her, and kinda talks to the other humans. So the setup here is really interesting. I don't really like the execution. It's a little too on the nose, but I like the idea, the scenario where you're already fighting a horrible creature. But then the horrible creature actually is going to like turn into your comrades and make killing it even more of an uncomfortable circumstance. That's a really emotionally gut-wrenching and difficult scenario to be put in. So the manga, first off, wow, what an interesting setup to be in. Now, obviously, this can get quite stale. An example manga where it follows the same boring rubric and kind of lays out the rubric quite blatantly is Bokurano. Bokurano, once you've seen the first kid die, you basically know what's going on. Bokurano, spoilers for Bokurano, that manga fucking sucks. But in Bokurano, all these 12 kids unknowingly signed a contract to basically defend Earth from other Z-Earth mechs or some fucking shit. And then every time they fight, their souls are used to power the mech. And then when they fight, then they die, but they save their reality or whatever. It's kind of fucking stupid. But it's the same story every time. A kid fights, a kid dies, blah, 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 blah. We get to see what the kid's fighting for, blah, blah, blah. The problem is that the children have no agency in the story, and it's really just like misery porn wankfest, like a totally unwinnable scenario. It's really unsatisfying in my opinion. You need to have some degree of we can win to make there something to like strive for. Otherwise you're just like, it's just misery porn. You're just miserable. That's all there is. And that's fucking boring to me. That's why Gantz is number 1, Bokurano number 0. Also, the art in Bokurano is some of the worst I've ever seen, short of the later chapters in Blame and in this manga. The action in this manga is some of the worst. Oh, talking about the art style. This manga in every way, shape, and form is uglier than Blame. The characters, at the very least, do look Japanese, which is interesting. Usually, they don't look like anime characters. And the art is terrible. There are genuine times. I don't think there was a single time in any of the action scenes I could tell what the fuck was going on from one panel to the next. It is so incomprehensible. You thought the later chapters in Blame were bad, where it's just a bunch of pixel drawings? Holy shit. This manga fucking gets to new heights of incomprehensible bullshit. That being said, it is still Nihei after all, and the manga is of general good quality in the art department. And I'm only saying that because I recently started reading Girls Last Tour, and the art in Girls Last Tour is actual stencil tier. It is terrible. So if you've read Girls Last Tour, which is a very famous manga, I imagine maybe if you're like listening to this, maybe you have. Knights of Sidonia has way better art than Girls Last Tour, infinitely better. And you can tell what Nihei likes to draw. He likes to draw like structures, so like the background stuff is always really interesting. It's just the story doesn't go anywhere. So back to the girl who got turned into a Gauna. The Gauna gets like killed. It's all kind of wrapped up or some fucking shit. I don't really remember. This story doesn't matter, so that's why I don't really pay much attention to it. Just the initial setup is what matters. So Tanikaze ends up piloting a mech too, and it turns out he's like one of the few people that like is good at piloting a mech and can like defeat Gauna. And there's this like special tool that they use to defeat the Gauna called the Kabazahi. Now, there's a lot of questions you can ask this manga that just kind of reveal how the plot is incredibly fucking stupid. One, why are they sending trainees to go fight the Gauna? In the beginning, they send trainees who are not even fully soldiers or knights yet to go fight the Gauna. This only becomes stupider. Later on in the manga, it's revealed that 2 Gauna got into the Sidonia ship and killed 98% of the Sidonian population, of the remaining humans of all of existence, supposedly. And they did that in 5 minutes. If the continuation of the species is that frail, why would you ever send trainees out to go fight even a single Gauna? You should always send your best. Why would you ever send kids? They're sending literal like 13 and 14-year-olds out to go fight these creatures that if just one gets in, they can all die. That's insane to me. So that part of the story is fucking dog shit. And there's a lot of part of the stories where if you're paying attention, the story fundamentally just does not make any fucking sense, but it's a little bit of a ride. So when does the story become good again? So Tanikaze is piloting a mech, and he becomes friends with a few people. One of them is Hoshijiro, who's obviously, going to be best girl. It's pretty obvious from the beginning. Then we have Izana. Izana is a between gender character. It's explicitly stated in the manga, and essentially they can turn into a woman or a man after they've fallen in love with a person, and I suppose this is for the purposes of procreation and making a child, but it is a little heteronormative. Anyway, though I don't really give a shit. I just thought that was kind of a little interesting. So we have our kind of trio of characters. There's some supporting characters that don't really matter. One of them is Kunado. He's a dumbass. He doesn't do anything. And 90% of the manga, he's actually mind controlled by somebody else, but not the beginning part. So Tanikaze ends up in a scenario where he's fighting the Gauna and Hoshijiro might die, but then he saves Hoshijiro, but then he's out of fuel. So then they're drifting around in space. And the timeline of this plot makes no sense. Supposedly they're drifting around in space for 11 days, but it's really dumb because they end up bonding a little bit, not too much. And then, the moment when they're about to kind of like maybe have a little bit more intimacy, then a bunch of other knights of Sidonia show up and they're like, oh, we came here to save you or whatever. We went against orders, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, it took you 11 days. It should have taken you like either 11 minutes to make this decision. What are you talking? 11 days? It's insane. So the timeline there is incredibly stupid. But the idea is interesting. These soldiers went against orders of higher command to go save one of their own. Good, yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Don't like the other stupid shit, but I like that a lot. Okay, so now in the next dub thing, we get a little teasers in the background of what's Kunado's motivations, because Kunado is basically just he's the quintessential bad boy character. I think at one point he's shown just having sex with a girl, and I think that's supposed to create in the reader's mind like, oh, he doesn't care about traditional relationships because he's having sex with a girl with black hair, but then over here he's walking with a girl with different color hair. That makes him a bad person. But yeah, no, he is a bad person. He's fucking stupid. Basically, he is an incel and he thinks he's owed the ability to pilot this special mech. I don't even know why. I mean, I do know why, but it's a fucking stupid, so I'm not going to talk about it. And yeah, so he gets like a leadership role in this next anti-Gauna mission, and what he does is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in a manga. So we have a 14-year-old kid who sabotages a mission to destroy a sleeping Gauna by telling Tanikaze, the main character, to detonate his mines early, which ends up blowing him away. Hoshijiro saves him. She ends up getting eaten by a Gauna, and yeah, so now we have our main heroine is a Gauna girl. She's Gone Girl, wink. And Kunado has fucked up everything and almost got Tanikaze killed. And then Tanikaze, he gets brought back to the hospital and he's kind of like, what happened? And everyone's mad at him and he doesn't know why. Yeah. So I'm just going to speed run to the arc of Kunado because I think this is the most interesting aspect of the story. Everything else is like, that's the meat. The Hoshijiro, Gauna, Tanikaze relationship, that's the meat going forward. But I just want to tell you what happens with Kunado's character because it's fucking insane. So Kunado, shortly after this, stops piloting, goes deep into the Kunado Manor. He gets mind controlled by like a brain slug that shoots into his eyeball from like a tiny mech girl or something. And then it turns out that the mind control is actually from Okai. Now, I have to explain a lot here. I'm going to try to do it really fast. Okai is a scientist who is a member of the Immortal Crew Society, who about like 300 years ago tried to do some Gauna experiment, and it Gauna wrong and almost got everyone killed. You know how I said 2 Gauna got in the ship and killed 98% of the population? That was because of Okai's stupid experiments. Now, does Okai ever recognize how dumb those experiments were and how much they put everything at risk? No. Does Okai get any retribution for his actions, really, other than just, he gets killed, but yeah, no, not really. Actually, Okai uses Kunado to do some truly horrific experiments. Nobody even cares, even though other members of the Immortal Crew Society know what's going on, don't even care, even though they know that this is the same stuff Okai was doing. Whatever. So eventually this all gets found out and Kunado is restored through magic, literally. It's very dumb. Like they're just like, we restored his memory somehow, but he won't remember the things that he was mind controlled. It's like, who cares? And so what do you think's gonna happen to Kunado? He did a horrible thing. He's been nothing but a genuine little whiny bitch because he doesn't get to pilot the mech of his choosing. What is going to happen to Kunado? Well, personally, I think he should get a shotgun to the face because he literally put the risk of all of human society, put them all at risk for his own petty vendetta. Well, here's what happens. Kunado aids in another character who we don't even know, literally are introduced in the 11th hour. He helps that character redeem or revenge his sister because she was killed by Gauna. So Kunado helps defend Sidonia with this guy, and this guy is like having like a emotional arc who we literally are introduced in the chapter where this all happens. And yeah, so Kunado basically becomes like a hero of Sidonia, and he got to defend it, and he got to pilot the mech that he wanted to also. So yeah, Kunado literally did everything wrong that you could possibly imagine and got everything that he wanted. So awesome, cool. I mean, if you intentionally write it that way, sure, but it doesn't feel like the manga can even realize how shit of a character he wrote. Anyway, so what's the main plot? The main plot here on out for the rest of the manga is Tanikaze trying to get back Hoshijiro. So we have a few forms in which Hoshijiro takes. We have placenta Hoshijiro, which is basically looks like human Hoshijiro, but she's got some Gauna parts, that description I had earlier about like weird hooves and shit. Yeah, she looks like that. And she doesn't communicate. She just kind of stares off in the distance, and she's staring at these weapons, the kabazahe, zashi, whatever the fuck. And the main Tanikaze goes and visits her all the time, but they don't really communicate, and that's kind of it. There's another Hoshijiro, because for some reason there's like fucking 3 Hoshijiros. I do not know why. Maybe she got blown in 3 pieces and 3 Gauna ate her. There's another one called the Red Moth, and this is basically a Gauna that looks like a Gauna version of one of the mechs. And she fights them a lot and runs away. And so like there's this hope that's like, well, maybe there's the Hoshijiro like pilot, and maybe they can capture her, and maybe she's gonna be, I got like a hair in my nose, I don't know what it is. Maybe she's gonna be, they can restore Hoshijiro that way. I don't know. And then there's this other weird, like, later on they take the placenta Hoshijiro, and then Kunado as Okai, or Okai as Kunado, like makes a child, a human hybrid from the placenta Hoshijiro into this human hybrid Gauna called Sumigi or Sumugi, and she's basically just, she's like a mech-sized Gauna, but she has like a tiny little tentacle, and she like hangs out with the main character, and she's all like, oh, I'm a cute little tentacle, hee hee hee. Like like 800 pages of this manga are just stupid shenanigans and harem anime shit later on. It's so fucking lame. What happens with Red Moth Hoshijiro? It's the biggest fucking disappointment imaginable. Basically, Tanikaze shows up, and he's been hanging out with Sumigi for a while, so he doesn't need Red Moth Hoshijiro, and he's like, stop wearing Hoshijiro's face. And it's like, dude, the Red Moth is closer to Hoshijiro than Sumigi. You're a fucking idiot. And we learn as the audience that every time the Red Moth needs to go into like placenta form to regenerate, she like remembers that she's a human, but then when she's a Gauna again, she like kind of loses some of those memories. So it's like she's kind of like, like deja vu or something. It's interesting. The manga sets up a very interesting kind of emotional dilemma, and then just kills it. Tanikaze kills the Red Moth, and then the Red Moth is like trying to like take over his ship, and then like Hoshijiro, completely naked, appears and is like riding his cock in the cockpit, because they're gonna like bring the placenta back, and it's like basically is dead, but like she was trying to like attack inside the thing, and yeah, so it's just like, and then that goes nowhere. That Hoshijiro is never seen again, and then Sumigi, I don't know, it's a bunch of dumb shit. The end of the manga is a fucking like, let's just try to wrap everything up. All the characters get paired off. It's fucking so sad, because you have Izana and you have Midorika, who are these other kind of like harem characters, and then you have like a tsundere robot that shows up in like fucking volume 10, and they're all living in this house, and it's like, so it's no longer a manga about fighting for human survival. It's not even a manga about like the immortal crew society, because like I guess the mangaka got bored with that plot and he just had like a random character show up and kill all of the immortal crew society, and then it's just it. That's just over. Yeah, it's fucking dumb. So I want to talk about a few of the things that I referenced early on. So the times where it's sexual but feels appropriate is the one I just mentioned with the Hoshijiro, and she's like attacking the cockpit, and then she's like in this naked placenta thing and she's like riding his cock. It's pretty overt, but it feels kind of earned, even though it's like kind of, it's also sexual assault, but it feels a little earned in terms of the story setting it up and then executing it. The other time is the main character is hanging out with the captain of the ship, who is another immortal crew society. And the main character is a clone of another member of the Mortal Crew Society who didn't want to be immortal anymore. So basically think like Captain America, you know how like he comes back at the end of Endgame and he's like, oh, I don't think I will, when he's an old man. That's the main character's dad, essentially. Like, he doesn't want to deal with this shit anymore. He just kind of wants to die. And then they revive him, and then they clone him, and Tanikaze finds out, and he's like, no, I'm gonna raise my child and get fucked. So he takes Tanikaze away, and he trains him and raises him, and then dies. And then we come to find out the captain actually had a crush on, the original Tanikaze. And she invites him over, and they're hanging out, and, she lets her hair down, and then it's raining, and he's like, oh, that's weird. I didn't see rain on the weather forecast today. And then it just cuts. It doesn't even show them like that close or anything. But I think we can read between the lines. She probably wanted to smash. Who knows what happened? I don't know. It's never brought up again, and it's hard to tell. I saw one fan theory that was like the Sumigi. Okay, spoiler. Sumigi dies, and they make like a new Sumigi who's like a Hoshijiro Sumigi, more human hybrid. And somebody thought that they took the sperm from when he fucked the cat. I don't fucking know. It's so fucking goofy. The people that read this manga and actually enjoy it and have fan theories are fucking crazy. Yeah. So that's another time where there's like implied sex, I believe, and it feels really, well, it doesn't feel appropriate, but it feels earned. It feels earned. So that part's quite interesting. And then the last time the manga is good. So the manga is good for like maybe volume 4. It's interesting. And then it's just like nothing fucking meaningful happens. And then all the interesting plots that they set up with the Immortal Crew Society go fucking nowhere. They all just get killed off, and there's no resolution. There's no recognition that was even going on. It's not even meaningful at all to the story, and it doesn't matter. But there's one self-contained plot later on in the manga that I think was great. So we are quite far from home, in a sense. We are attacking the greater Gauna cluster, which is just this massive cluster of Gauna where one tentacle is the size of the Sidonia. It's insane. It's like, how could we defeat such a being, Well, don't worry, because it just defeats itself. It's fucking stupid. I think it like gets defeated off screen, actually. It's so fucking pathetic. But there's like these other floating Gauna cluster pods around, and we're doing this like military op so we can get solar energy from the fucking sun, and we're going in. And then there's these characters called the Honoka clones. And so one of them is in this battle sortie battalion, and it goes bad. She ends up getting kind of like crash landed on the Gauna thing, and then kind of like taken inside of it, and then she's like flying around through it, and then they see the signal. She's gone. Oh no, she's dead. We lost her signal inside the Gauna. And she's like flying around inside of it, and she's like, oh no, I don't want to die. The classic line in every manga where you want to set up like a Riona Guro kind of like story. It's like, no, I don't want to die, says the character who's about to get killed in the most horrifically violent way imaginable. But that's not what happens. She escapes. She lives. It's amazing. And she's flying out there, and she's trying to contact the humans. and it's kind of working, but kind of not. And then we cut to the humans, and they were like, okay, we got a signal. Honoka's alive. Oh my god. Okay, we can go out there and save her. And then they're going out there, and then we get this call that says, like, to kill them, to shoot Honoka. And there's also another ship nearby as well. But that one we see, that one's like a Gauna infested one. So like don't save them. But save Honoka, right? And right before the bullets destroy, or whatever the hell it is that they fire in this fucking manga, destroy Honoka and the other night ship with the person inside, Honoka realizes that she's a Gauna. Which sounds funny to say. I'm not making a joke there. She becomes a Gauna. She becomes one of these creatures. She was digested and spit out. And all that part about escaping was just some kind of, like, I guess, fantasy that she believed. But the execution of that, like, little one-off soldier story was so much better than everything after volume, like, 4 onward. This is like a 15-volume manga. And only one story is honestly worth telling in the entirety of it. I kept reading it because I thought, there's no way it's going to get worse. And then it just became a harem manga. It was just terrible. But that one story about the clone Honoka and her realizing what she'd become a second before she dies, that was truly terrifying. The manga doesn't really... It doesn't treat the Honoka clones as like a comedy bit, which I'm very thankful for, but it also doesn't really do anything with their characters either. And it's even darker when you consider the fact that these Honoka clones are essentially 3 or 4 human years old, but in terms of like biological development, they're about like 13 or 14 or 15. So we've essentially killed a 3-year-old. That's pretty fucked up. That's the last time the manga is good. The ending of the story, it's the same as Blame. In Blame, the main character finds the terminal net gene carrier, but they're still battling people. It's the kind of ending that's like, stay tuned for his future adventures, where it doesn't seem like it's paying respect to the journey and just, being able to relax and rest. Well, this manga does the same thing. We have the child of Tanikaze and weird ass fuck hybrid Sumigi human whatever the fuck, and guess what she's doing? She's fighting the Gauna. So you're probably wondering, if they defeated all the Gauna, why is she still fighting them? I don't fucking know. You're probably wondering, what are the Gauna? We never know. You're probably wondering why the Gauna are attacking humans. That we do know, and it's found out through pure happenstance. The scientists know the Gauna go after the Kabi, which is this material at the end of a spear that can pierce Gauna. They know that. They have evidence of that. But it isn't until like 6 volumes later where they're like, oh, they go after Higgs particles and they go after Kabazahi. Oh, and then the captain's like, oh yeah, I think, or some character's like, yeah, I think the Gauna attacked Earth after we developed, the Higgs particles energy. Yeah, maybe that's why they're here. Maybe blah, blah, blah. So you set up this really interesting thing where it's like, oh, if we get rid of these things, then the Gauna will leave us alone. Well, guess what happens? The captain is like, we've become too reliant on these things. We can't get rid of them, so that's out of the question. We must kill the Gauna. And it's like, oh, okay. That's pretty boring. Because earlier in the manga, there was a faction of people that believed that disarmament was the path towards peace with the Gauna. And they were really close to being right. It's not just disarmament, it's getting rid of the Kabi, which is just some material, and getting rid of the Higgs particle energy generator things. Now, sure, you go back to nuclear energy or whatever, right? I don't fucking know. I mean, they probably can't build a nuclear energy thing, but you could develop something else. They're right by the fucking sun, and they know how to do solar energy, apparently. But no, they just like brush that all away. So it's so lame because there's a whole subsection of people and this kind of a subplot of like these pacifists and disarmament and blah, 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 blah. And they get proven kind of right, but it's just brushed aside and never considered. It's never like debated. It doesn't put forth an interesting ethical dilemma. It just says, no, this is an action manga. We need action and we need harem anime bullshit, and then that's it. And it just never really goes below the surface for some of the things that the manga sets up, and it's really unfortunate. Oh, okay. Here's the final thing. The Immortal Crew Society. How do you think these people were selected to be members of the Immortal Crew Society? Well, the people who are on the Immortal Crew Society just happen to be inspecting a giant rock that was hollowed out and looks like a piece of cheese, ran into a Gauna, a Kabi floated out from the rock, killed the Gauna. They didn't do anything, and because of this, they were considered heroes because that was the first time humans ever killed a Gauna. Apparently, nuclear bombs do nothing or anything. Kind of fucking. Mind you, human society was like 1,000. It was like 1,000 years in the future, and they didn't have any tools to defeat the Gauna when they attacked Earth. Yeah, sure, why not? That makes sense. But yeah, the Immortal Crew Society have nothing going for them. They're just people who were lucky. Do you think the manga makes this a point in the story that the leadership is ineffective and stupid? No. It's just treated as like they're the Immortal Crew Society and they're great. And then that's it. That's really it. Oh, and the captain also likes to run a sauna. Cool. Cool. You're really doing a lot with the plot you set up there, Nihei. Anyway, for how many volumes this manga is, 15, 5. I give it a 0 out of 10. It is dog shit. If you're kind of interested, read the first 4, but it's genuinely fucking terrible. The action is incomprehensible, and it just boils down to a stupid harem anime where none of the characters matter, and also none of the characters' lives are at risk anymore. No, from after volume 4, nobody important dies or matters. It's just stupid. So, waste of fucking time. Don't read it. 0 out of 10. Fuck Nihei. Write blame too, but don't make it stupid. See ya.